You want to know what separates the wise from the clever, what divides those who truly understand life from those who merely survive it. It is not intelligence, it is not education, it is not even experience, it is sacrifice, but not the kind you think. I'm not speaking of giving up comfort or wealth or pleasure, though these may follow. I am speaking of something far more difficult, far more profound. The sacrifice I speak of is this: you must give up being understood by most people. You must release your need for the world to recognize your truth. And in doing so, you will lose something you have spent your entire life protecting, the illusion that you belong to the crowd. Let me ask you this. Have you ever stood in a room full of people and felt completely alone? Not because they ignored you, but because you could see something they could not. You watched them pursue things that would never satisfy them. You heard them speak with certainty about matters they had never examined. You felt their fear disguised as confidence, their emptiness dressed as success, and in that moment you realized you are no longer one of them. This is the beginning. This is where wisdom demands its price. Because most people live their entire lives inside a beautiful dream. They believe in the stories they have been told, that happiness comes from the right job, the right partner, the right amount of money. They believe that if they follow the rule, life will reward them. They believe that their suffering is an exception, not the rule. And they need to believe this because the alternative is terrifying. But you have seen through the dream, and not because you are superior, but because something within you refused to stay asleep. Perhaps it was suffering that woke you. Perhaps it was a moment of clarity that shattered your illusions. Perhaps you were born this way, eyes open in a world that prefers them closed. Whatever the reason, you cannot unsee what you have seen. And here is where the sacrifice begins. When you see clearly, you become dangerous to those who do not. Your very presence reminds them of truths they are desperately trying to avoid. You do not have to say a word. Your stillness in the face of their chaos, your silence when they expect agreement, your refusal to participate in their delusions, this is enough to disturb them. And what disturbs them, they must destroy or distance themselves from. I have watched this pattern repeat itself throughout all of human history. The one who sees is always isolated, not because they choose isolation, but because clarity creates a kind of solitude that cannot be avoided. You speak a language most people do not understand. You ask questions they do not want to answer. You refuse to pretend. And pretending is the glue that holds most human relationships together. Do you understand what I am telling you? Wisdom does not make you more connected. It makes you more alone. This is the first sacrifice. You must give up the comfort of belonging. And it is not a small thing. We are not built for solitude. From the moment we are born, we crave connection, acceptance, the feeling of being part of something larger than ourselves. To be excluded from the tribe was once a death sentence. And though we no longer live in caves, that ancient fear remains embedded in our bones, to be separate, to be misunderstood, to be labeled as strange or difficult or too intense. This feels like dying, but if you seek wisdom, you must be willing to die in this way. You must be willing to let the crowd move on without you. You must accept that most people will never understand why you cannot simply relax, why you cannot just go along, why you insist on questioning what everyone else accepts. They will call you complicated. They will say you think too much. They will suggest, with kindness or cruelty, that you would be happier if you were more like them. And they are not wrong. You would be happier if you could return to the dream. Unconsciousness is comfortable. Ignorance is peaceful. The unexamined life is easy to live. But you cannot go back. Once you have tasted truth, everything else tastes like ash. So, you walk forward, alone, if necessary, and here is where the sacrifice deepens, because it is not just other people you must release, it is also your own need to fix them, your need to wake them up, your need to make them see what you see. This is the second sacrifice, and it is even more painful than the first. You see your loved ones chasing illusions, and you want to save them. You watch them suffer unnecessarily, and you want to show them the way out. You feel their potential being wasted, and you want to shake them awake, but you cannot. Not because you lack the words or the wisdom, but because they are not ready, and they may never be ready. And your insistence that they wake up only pushes them further into sleep. This is agony for the wise soul, to see clearly and be unable to help, to know the path and watch others stumble in darkness, to hold truth in your hands and be called a fool for offering it. But wisdom teaches you this: you are not responsible for the blindness of others. You are only responsible for your own sight. Let me tell you something that most will find difficult to accept. The people you love are not waiting for you to enlighten them. They are waiting for you to stop disturbing their peace. And this is not cruelty on their part. It is survival. And they have built elaborate structures to protect themselves from truths they are not ready to face. And you, with your clarity, threaten those structures every time you speak. So you must learn to be silent, not the silence of weakness or cowardice, but the silence of strength, the silence of one who sees but does not need to prove it, the silence of one who knows but does not need others to validate that knowing. Now, this is harder than it sounds, because silence in the face of what you perceive as injustice or delusion or unnecessary suffering feels like complicity. It feels like betrayal. You want to shout to shake people awake and to save them from themselves. But this impulse, this urgent need to correct, to fix, to enlighten, this is not wisdom. This is ego disguised as compassion. True compassion understands that each soul moves at its own pace, that consciousness cannot be forced, that wisdom cannot be given, only discovered. And your job is not to drag anyone into the light. Your job is to carry your own light steadily, regardless of who follows. Do you see the paradox? The wiser you become, the less you can do for others. Not because you lack power, but because you understand the limits of intervention. You see that most problems cannot be solved from the outside, that most suffering is necessary for growth, that most people must walk through their own darkness before they can appreciate the light. And so you watch, you remain present, you offer what you can when it is asked for, but you do not force your wisdom on anyone. This is the discipline of the wise, to be available without being insistent. But there is a third sacrifice, and this one cuts deeper still. You must give up your attachment to outcomes. Think about this carefully. You have worked on yourself. You have examined your illusions, faced your fears, questioned your assumptions. You have done the difficult inner work that most people avoid their entire lives. And because of this, you naturally expect certain results. You expect to feel at peace. You expect your relationships to improve. You expect life to become easier, clearer, more manageable. But wisdom does not promise you peace. It promises you truth. And truth is often uncomfortable, disruptive, even painful. The more clearly you see, the more you recognize how little control you actually have. You see the randomness, the chaos, the inevitable suffering that comes with being alive. You see that even your best efforts cannot protect you or those you love from loss, from failure, from death. This is terrifying because if you cannot control outcomes, If you cannot guarantee safety or success or happiness, then what is the point of all this effort? What is the point of becoming wise if wisdom does not deliver you from suffering? And here is the answer that few want to hear. Wisdom does not deliver you from suffering, it delivers you into suffering. But with your eyes open, it does not make life easier, it makes life more real. And reality is both more beautiful and more brutal than the dream you left behind. So you must sacrifice your expectation. That clarity will bring comfort. You must release your hope. That understanding will protect you. You must accept that wisdom often increases your capacity for pain because it increases your capacity for awareness. And awareness does not shield you, it opens you. This is why so many turn back. This is why the path of wisdom is so rarely traveled all the way to its end, because at a certain point, it becomes clear that this path does not lead to the destination you thought you were seeking. It does not lead to safety or certainty or control. It leads to surrender. And surrender, true surrender, is death, not physical death, but the death of the self. That needs things to be different than they are, the death of the ego. That insists on being right, being recognized, being rewarded, the death of the identity that says, I am the one who knows, and they are the ones who don't, and this makes me special. This is perhaps the deepest sacrifice of all. You must give up your specialness. You must give up the secret pride, and that comes from seeing what others cannot see. Because, yes, you see clearly. But this clarity does not make you better than anyone. It simply makes you responsible for what you see. And what are you responsible for? Not for fixing the world, not for waking up the sleeping, not for proving that you were right all along. You are responsible only for this dash dash, living in alignment with what you know to be true, regardless of whether anyone else understands or approves or even notices. This is the work. Not grand, not dramatic, not recognized by others. Simply living with integrity in a world that often rewards compromise. Simply staying awake in a world that prefers sleep. Simply maintaining your clarity. So, in a world that celebrates confusion as complexity,